It is our good pleasure to be here. Turn me down just a hair, if you don't mind. Thank you. It's my good pleasure to be here. Who's excited about 2025?
Only because it's 2024 is behind me.
There you go. What's the rest of you excited about? Anything? Are you pessimistically optimistic? We're going to try some new things this year. One of them is going to be today. We've already had the question asked, will this be a total acre pitch, sales pitch? Nope. You will get today whatever topics you want to talk about. We're going to do our best. We got a couple of runners, I think, that will ask questions or have a microphone so you can ask questions. But our goal is to introduce ourselves real quick. Anybody not know anything about Randy Dowdy?
I heard you were accused of being Dave Hewlett the other day.
I did. This morning in the hotel lobby, I ate breakfast and I was walking out and the guy says, "Hey man." I said, "Hey, how you doing?" He said, he had a colleague sitting next to him. He said, "You know who that is?" The guy said, "Nope, I don't know who that is." And I said, "You ready for this year?" "Yep." He said, "Hold on just a second. That's David Hula." I said, "I will tell him you said that."
You better tell Miss Sandy that.
That's right. I said, "I'm Randy Dowdy." He said, "Well, y'all look a lot alike." So my condolences to Miss Sandy, but it's our good pleasure to be here. It's always great to see a lot of familiar faces. I see some Total Acre guys that's in the group, that's in the crowd, but more importantly, I've seen a lot of you over the years with the Commodity Classic and different speaking events over the years, so we appreciate you coming and expressing interest. Total Acre was a figment of my imagination many years ago, and I got to give Stephen Albrock a little bit of credit here. 2011, I dreamed of this idea of sharing information with growers. It was important to me to share information with growers simply because of the fact that, you know, when I first started farming, I was a first generationer. My dad was a preacher, and I went to farmers around me to try to get information, and I just couldn't get people to share a lot of information. Just wouldn't do it. And I really wasn't a threat in my eyes, especially when I started out with a John Deere 3020 and some old 71 flex planters with a twin row homemade Pittsburgh frame with two 71 flex planters on it. Pretty primitive for 2006. That's what I started with. Was I really a threat? Not really.
John Deere has a puck kit for that now.
They have, there you go. On a two row, right? There you go. But when I went to farmers just didn't want to share a lot of information, and that bothered me. And I have not forgot that. And I told David and Stephen in 2011, I said, look, we've had a pretty good run. 2014, 15, we had a really good run. We won a lot of contests. 2017, we started at that time what was called Next Level and became Total Acre. And I told David, I said, it's great to win some contests, but it's more important to share our knowledge and to pay our knowledge forward. And that's why we're here. So we started a program called Total Acre years ago. And the goal of mine today is let's talk about what you want to talk about. I'm Randy Dowdy from Georgia. I'm also got a place in Michigan. This year, Randy's going to grow a little bit of corn in Michigan. Do we have any Michiganders up here? Got a few. I see a couple in the back. I'm an hour north of Ludington, or of Muskegon, in a town called Ludington, just to the east of there. Anybody farm anything further north than that?
Isn't that Canada?
It's going to be a difference for me. I'm used to sandy soils. They got sandy soils up there, but a little bit different growing climate than what Georgia is. So we're going to deal with some 90 to 100-day varieties on corn. Not used to that. And we're going to deal with some 0.5s to 1.9s on bean. Really not used to that. But hopefully I'm going to learn something, Marion, about some of the challenges that I hear people say, and I'm either going to say you're right and I'm wrong. I've been trying to lead you down a path for a long time that you have been leaving yield on the table. I can't figure it out. I don't know what else to do. Just move south. Or I'm going to be able to say, what's the problem? I've been telling y'all for quite some time some things to do. We've now made X kind of yields. If we can do it, why can't you? So that's the goal and the premise behind it. David, I'll introduce you briefly, but I don't think I can do it any good. Everybody knows who King David is, right? The first time I met David, I guess formally, was in 2011 at the Commodity Classic in Tampa. And one of the things that I pitched to him and Stephen Albrock, I guess 4 or 5 years later after that, was, let's start something that we can share this information together. Unfortunately, Stephen passed away. Unfortunately, totally unexpected. And I always like to remember he was a pioneer, no pun intended, in the corn production. Do y'all agree? He's truly missed. So I don't know if Miss Cheryl gets to see any of this, but I think about Stephen and talk about him often. So, David, without any further ado.
Well, I get nervous. You see me over here. So we could put our mind in the right frame. If we could just bow our heads so we could say a word of prayer. Heavenly Father, we're just grateful to have a chance to come together in this humble state of Colorado, dear Lord, and have a chance to exchange information. You've challenged us over the years. You're going to bless us in this upcoming season. Just give us the information, the wisdom, and the chance to make the decisions to glorify you. And we're just grateful for the birth of our Savior, the death of our Savior, so we could have everlasting life. In Jesus Christ's name, amen.
And Lord, help us to where he'll tell us how to make 625 bushels tobacco.
In Michigan.
In Michigan. There you go.
Yeah. Now, just briefly, I'm not the first generation farmer. My dad's not a preacher. I had a chance to farm with my late granddad, my late uncle, and now my late dad after about 4 years now, and learned a great deal from them. They were always pushing me, always innovators. My granddad was the first one to be 100 bushels in the area. And so we've come a long way. I farmed with a brother and a son. We farmed the oldest continuously farmed ground from the Western civilization. So that's, if I had a claim to fame, it would be that. I wish we owned it, but it was first cultivated in 1609. We've come a long way from digging a hole, putting 3 catfish down and 4 kernels of maize on top of it to raise a corn crop. And then when I had a chance to meet Randy, and he talked about the total acre, and he said he wanted farmers to exchange information and talk. I'm like, Dowdy, they will surely talk about you, but they're not going to share information. And I had my first chance to work with him in Kentucky at one of the camps. And I just wanted to see what was going on. And just watching those growers communicate amongst themselves. And while I was there, I even learned things. So we'll talk. We're going to answer questions in this session here because what's on your mind. But just imagine having that same ability to do that all year long with peers and then have a data platform that can help you make the right decisions. Because oftentimes as a grower, what do? You go out to the trade show, you see a product, you try it, you weigh it at the end of the harvest, say, okay, that worked this year, or it didn't work this year. The cool thing about Total Acre and that network is we're influencing the crop in the year in which you're growing. And then we're creating a partnership with Farm Journal, and we'll be able to do some podcasts, and we'll be influencing stuff twice a month with y'all. So it's going to be exciting. So I'm humbled to be here in front of y'all. If I had my name badge, it just says farmer. So I'm just like every one of y'all. The difference between myself and y'all is I've failed way more times than y'all ever want to try to fail. But I picked my boots up and we start trying again.
All that free stuff probably helps too now, David.
You know. You say that all the time. There was a cartoon somebody sent me the other day. There was a farmer. He was getting a phone call from his John Deere rep. Said, hey man, you forgot to send that payment in for that tractor. And he said, well, you told me it would pay for itself.
There you go.
Yeah.
All right, this is our footprint. We've got growers all over the country. There's some even in South Africa. We've got several that's in the northern provinces, in Quebec, Canada, et cetera. We've got growers all over, so if you're interested in our footprint, that kind of gives you an idea. Now, I want to talk about what you want to talk about. What questions would you like to know possibly the answer to, if we can answer it? I'm the guy that'll tell you, if I know it, I'll tell you the answer. If I don't, I'll tell you I don't know, and I'm gonna pass it over to him, no pressure. But we would love to talk about what you want to talk about. We can make it a sales pitch all you want, but we really think that if you're gonna be sustainable, you're gonna take and understand the challenge. We want to understand what you're worried about or maybe the things that you're interested in so we can maybe answer those questions. Yes, ma'am. Miss Louise?
Love to hear you say what causes tip back and what can you do to prevent it or anything.
All right, the question was, what causes tip back and what can you do to prevent it? Well, I'm not a breeder, but I will tell you from an agronomic standpoint, in my experience, potassium plays a huge role. Sometimes the plant can have a lot of deficiencies. If you've been cutting back on potassium because the potassium prices have been so expensive the last 4 or 5 years, I think base saturation is time to start addressing it. We like to have money in the bank, so to speak, saving for a rainy day. It's raining. It's time to buy some potassium. The higher that you can build that base saturation on potassium will help you with that tip back. But the number one thing that I think that growers do often is they plant it too thick. They plant it too thick for the amount of solar radiation they're going to have that year. And you say, well, Randy, what does that mean? How many people plant variable rate? You variable rate based off of what? Soil fertility? Yield zones? And that generally applies to what? Where soil type changes, right? Does that change every year? So it really doesn't change. The soil type really doesn't change overnight. What I think farmers should be doing, in my opinion, is you should be planting based off of what's the weather going to be like 60, 70, 80, 90 days after you plant it. Now, who knows that answer? The weather person surely don't know. And because you don't know that answer, I think that you must mitigate stress and risk. And this is my version. If we had Matt Bennett in the room talking about hedging or calls and puts, or somebody that's a marketer in here, this is my version of calls and puts to planting. Because we don't know what the weather's going to be like 60, 70, 80 days later, I believe that you should take and hedge your bets. Meaning, if your highest population that you think that you could be comfortable with planting based off history, now, if that's 38,000, now let's spread some risk. Let's have some at 38, 34, 30,000, and 26,000. You say, Randy, that's just a lot lower population than I'm comfortable making or planting. If you go out there and you look at the edges of the fields and the edges of the field does not have tip back, what's the difference?
Sunlight.
Sunlight. So if you planted at 36, 38,000 on the edges of the field and you go 24 or 48 rows in, Marion, and you start getting an inch and a half tip back, what's the difference? Did it rain less? Maybe it's fertility, but most of the time it's sunlight. So in my opinion, we believe in hedging our bets. I will plant on every farm at least 4 populations. Common for me on the irrigated ground, I'll go 26, 30, 34, 38,000. And what's the mean of that? 32,000 plants. If it turns out to be a sunshine premium year, Dwayne, I'm gonna wish they was all at 38,000. If it turns out to be a cloudy year where we're not getting ample solar radiation, I'm gonna wish they were all at 26 and 30,000. Now, how many people go out there after they're through planting and realize that it's a cloudy year and they're not getting the amount of solar radiation that they covet, and they go out there and they start weeding and pruning out some plants? Nobody. Now you're a next year man. This is my version of calls and puts. I'm in the game depending on what the weather is. So my opinion, most tip back is caused by potash deficiencies or flat out some kind of moisture stress. It can do that, but if you're just having abortion, I start looking at solar radiation between 1,400 GDUs and 2,400 GDUs. If it's cloudy during that time frame, you want it to be cloudy at night because it's raining, not during the day.
And all right, so Dowdy talked about where he does strips. When we were doing the TV show with Mickey Gotch over in Elkhorn, Nebraska, he does the VRT stuff. He's using a smart farmer, changing his populations based on what smart farmer said. What I challenged him to do was, all right, you create this, but you can also in that monitor say, hey, I want to go 5% less than it would say, and then I do 5% more. So he had strips, and he had some irrigated corn that was 26,000. That was some of his best corn that year.
And the key to knowing whether or not you're going to plant it thick enough, are you making 10 bushels 1,000, yes or no? You plant 26,000 plants, are you making 260? Are you making 10 bushels per thousand, yes or no?
I would say most of them are 5 to 6.
Most of them's gonna be in that 6 to 6.8 based off our total acre growers, and we feel like we've done a really good job of trying to help them get them up at the same time. But guys are still struggling. If you're not planting it any thicker, I mean, if you're planting it that thick, is it solar radiation? But now, is it emergence? Are they all coming up at the same time? If you're not planting and making 10 bushels per thousand, something better change with the planter, or the man that's running it, or the woman that's running it, because now we got an issue, okay? The seed company loves it when you go out there and you plant 36, 38, 40,000, chasing yield. They appreciate it. They give you refunds when it's cloudy. They give you refunds when you do a poor job getting it out of the ground. Sometimes you got to look in the mirror, okay? Next question. Somebody fire a good one. I want to stump David Hula.
Come on, y'all. I know it's a big group. Yeah,
Tar spot.
tar spot.
We don't have it in our area yet, but it's knocking on the door.
Dwayne, you're in Callaway, Nebraska. Question was tar spot. The problem is, I think it's here to stay. It's overwintering in your ditches. If you've had it, it's overwintering in your fodder. Most people, Marion, is not running a turning plow like you've been talking about for a while. Most people's not doing that anymore. They're not bearing that residue. So it's overwintering. If you've had it, congratulations, you're probably gonna get to keep dealing with it. And the problem is, once you see tar spot, they say it's what, 12, 13 days old at the time you see the first spot? So now it's a prevent play. And there are some fungicides that do a good job, but now it's about coverage. That's a big deal. So I think tar spot's inevitable. I think the first time I heard about it was 5 or 6 years ago when it was in southern Wisconsin, northern Illinois. And it's your version of what we call southern rust. It's a problem. And it is not a matter of if you're gonna get it, how bad's it gonna be, and how many times will you have to spray. It is a prevent play. And we're excited because we have now partnered with a company that is now looking at RNA, mRNA. What if you could trigger, what if the plant is sending out gene expression and it's telling you that 6, 8 weeks in advance that a disease has been detected in the profile, in the messenger of the RNA? Would that be something that you could now do a better job of preventing? Sure. So we're looking at RNA. We have partnered with a company called Crop Diagnostics. We're very interested. What if we could also see nutrient deficiencies? So we're looking for a lot of those things. That's the future. We're looking outside and thinking outside the box.
Yeah, and tar stop's not something that's just happened. It's been around. I mean, I've pulled up some old plant pathologist textbooks. I'm a Wolfpacker by education. It was in there. I didn't graduate till 85. So, I mean, it's not something that's just happened. But one of the cool things is you ask how to control it. Just by coincidence, did y'all know that Pioneer Genetics had some natural tolerance to it? Now, there is some genetics going out there. You know, the breeders are doing stuff for that as well. So, but it is a prevent play from what I'm seeing. I don't fight it. So it's something we got. Now, is it also triggered by some of their plant nutrient imbalances and or soil nutrient imbalances? There's some theories about that as well.
All right, I was just text a question. We'll do one from the audience. Let's see.
Who in the world's got your phone number that could text you?
Mackenzie.
Oh, okay.
Y'all want David's? Hope y'all get ready. How much of your contest yield is attached to the ability to irrigate? The highest yields we make, period, even though we get between 50 to 60 inches of annual rainfall on the irrigated class, by 100% we'll still irrigate 10 to 15 inches. The problem is 50 to 60 inches of annual rainfall, it does not partition when we want it. We might get a 10-inch rain event through a hurricane or a tropical storm. We can get a stupid front hang out over us for 3 weeks. Cloudy days is a problem. Raining 3/10 to 3 inches a day for 2 weeks at a time. It happens. But water is quite often our limiting factor. When we need it, we need it. So almost all of our highest yields are going to come from irrigation, and I think David would concur.
Yeah, same. Now, we've had some good successes with dry land if the good Lord gives us rain. So,
The question was, it would be interesting to see your practices implemented in a Midwest fashion without irrigation. 90% of what's in this group that's in total acre does not have irrigation. So we're working with growers all over the country with irrigation and without, and we're telling them all the things that we're doing on our farms. But more importantly, the growers are learning from one another. Corn's corn, beans are beans. They react differently in different parts of the world, but it's still corn. But the best thing about the group is that there's a group of people that share information with the group, and it's a peer group experience. They're sharing a lot of information with one another. So we're learning from those areas as well. David, you got anything on that?
No, I'm good with that. Yes, sir.
You talked about tar spot. Is there
Any
any systematic fungicides?
systematic fungicides against it? I know that there's talk about like probiotic fungicides out there. I don't deal with it, so I mean, I'm not going to say anything.
Everything that I'm aware of is a prevent play. There is no curative function of any fungicides that I'm aware of.
Yeah.
If so, I think you would know. You'd be telling me, well, so-and-so just advertised they got one to cure tar spot. That'd be their biggest marketing campaign. From what I understand, it's a prevent play only. Now, when do you spray it? How long does the fungicide last? Most people spray in a tassel application. You get 3 weeks efficacy at best out of a
At best.
fungicide. 3 weeks. Is the disease coming in at tassel, or is it coming in between tassel and black layer? You tell me, when's it come in? Hopefully not during that 3 weeks. Hopefully the fungicide did well. But most of the time it's coming in, later in the season. If a fungicide only lasts 3 weeks, what might we need to do again? You might need to make another application. And then it's about coverage. How much of the plant can you get covered? Has anybody had any really yield devastation from tar spots yet? Anybody? Got a few guys raising their hand. It's a problem. Welcome to my world. In Southern Rust world, it's not a matter of if we're going to get it, but how many times are we going to have to spray? And it's that same mentality. It's about every 2 to 3 weeks we're making an application. We generally like to spray at V10 to V12, then we'll come back at R1 once we have full brown silk, and then we're coming back every 2 to 3 weeks after that. It ain't a matter. For all the dollars I've already spent, what's 20 more at that point per acre to preserve that crop? You can't save your way to prosperity, but you can spend your way broke. I get it. There's a fine line. But do we want the disease to take it, or do we want to do something about it? So genetics would be by far the best way to attack it if there's resistance, but if not, you're going to have to use some of the chemistry. Next question. Yes, sir. Talk loud.
All right, Matt, come on, hurry up.
All right, so I guess my question is, out here, there's a lot of good companies that show that they have a lot of biologicals.
Yep.
How do you help these guys think about how they can evaluate when somebody's talking to them about biological and how it may or may not fit on them?
Now let's define biological first. How do y'all define biologicals?
Well, I was on a panel one time and they were talking about gibberellic acid, cytokines, and IVAs, and I'm thinking, when I think of biology, I think of some kind of bug. Well, I guess there's two theories. You got the synthetic type biologicals, and then you got the bugs in the jug biologicals. That's what I would quantify them there, Dowdy.
For me, when I'm thinking about biology, I want to stimulate what's naturally occurring in my environment. I want to make it proliferate. I want to make it prolific, meaning I want it to multiply. But I also want to understand what's out there. And has anybody met Cody Goins, ROI Biologicals? He's got a booth here. We've vetted a lot. We have vetted a lot of products out there. And I had a lot of companies come to me in the very beginning that wanted to go down the path of, well, we sequence certain protozoa and mycorrhizal fungi to make sure that they're in balance. And we make sure that they're the right ones for your environment. That sound good? That sound good? They talk about, we like to promote and give you more protozoa and fungi because you have a certain amount of bacteria in your soils. What's my next question? So you're going to pull a soil, does it work? Everybody won't say, well, what is it? How do you measure, does it work? Y'all don't know Randy very well yet, because I'm going to ask another set of questions. Number one, if we're going to talk about balance, or if you're going to talk about what you think I got, when are you going to pull a sample and look at what I got? That's first. How do we know that it's out of balance on my soils? And if it takes balance, why are we selling a package that's going to add to some of them that I may or may not need? Why wouldn't I just target Protozoa if that's all I needed, as opposed to buying all the other ones? So it gets difficult when you start asking those questions, because they want to sell a package that's going to work for everybody. It's going to give them 10 bushels, and everybody just talks about it and goes and spends money and walks away. I'm the guy that wants to know more. Marion, I don't want to know that this yield, we got yield. I want to know where it came from. I got to understand that. So for me, I'm promoting the best biology I can, because I want a living root mass around that root where I'm going to place that seed. I want a living root mass that's primed and ready to go to work for where I'm going to put that seed. That's why cover crops are a big deal for me. I need a living root mass, whether that's a weed or whether that's grass or some kind of small grain, something I can kill easily. I'm going to plant into that. I think we're going to colonize around that root mass, and we're going to have biologicals that's ready to go to work for me, because 90%, I think, of what the data I've heard, 90% of fertility is coming from biological activity. So whether it's breaking down and mineralizing residual organic matter, or whether it's breaking down the fertility that you apply, it's coming from the biology. The biology is doing the work. So the first thing I encourage you to do, has anybody pulled a soil sample and had it sent off for fertility? Now,
Sure,
has anybody pulled off a soil sample and sent it off for biological activity? You will get you an aha moment. And then you got to see what you got. One of the biggest successes I've had, and Cody came down to my place, and he actually pulled soil samples at my property, and he did it with David too, on some of the farms we had really high yields on. It's coming because of our biological activity. We got some of the highest levels in the country. Part of it's because I stay warm. I got 300 days a year, something's growing. 300. I stay warm, but I always got a living root mass there. The next thing that we're doing, we're adding a lot of humic and fulvic acids. Now, all humic and fulvic acids are not created equal. But if they've not been heat treated, they should be alive. So now I'm looking for a non-heat treated source of humic acid that I'm applying. One of the biggest products that I use all the time is a product called Network. It's a big one. You ask the question, I'll tell you what I'm using.
All right, one thing I would add to that on Matt, when you ask, as y'all are going to these vendors, and there's a lot of bugs in the jug out there, and Dowdy said, have what is in your soil expand. It'd be like me taking my wife's dog to South Africa, dropping off in a safari. How long do you think it'd last? It'd be a dog nugget pretty quick. Something's going to eat it up. So as you're going to these vendors, ask them, what is it going to do for you? All right? It's because they're going to tell you, hey, we're going to increase root mass. All right, what's that going to give you? Well, hopefully it'll help you in a drought, but also you can capture more nutrients. Or if they're saying, hey, we're going to give you more phosphorus. Find out what it's going to do for you, and then ask them, well, how can I measure if it's working? Do you pull a tissue sample? Hey, if it's going to give you more phosphorus, pull a tissue sample where you did with, and then pull a tissue sample where you did without. This is one of the things that we do as a group as well. Because a farmer will never give up something that he knows pays. Don't mean to say one of your quotes there, Dowdy. But in a time like this, you really wish you knew if that biological would have worked. So I would really ask them, what is it going to do for you? How can you measure success? And then if they can give you a good answer there, say, hey, all right, we'll give it a try. Let's figure something out. Please, try it on a small amount of acres. Don't go try it on a vast acreage. And always leave a control so you can measure your success in yield as well. Not just did it actually give you more nutrients, but did it even pay on the other end? All right.
Try stimulating the biology you have before you go out and just add a lot of other things. Now, how do we stimulate biology? Nitrogen, warm soils, living root mass, and carbon. Now let's figure out how to increase all those. Stimulate what we have first. I think nature does a pretty good job of reconstituting itself and being pretty resilient. And then you can start looking at other products that have mycorrhizal fungi and protozoa. But right now, I think the lowest hanging fruit that you can get the most benefit from in ROI, let's just stimulate what you got. Next question. Yes, sir. Program for increasing soybean yields. David, do you want this one?
I'll give it to you. That's the easy one.
That's easy. There you go. Number one, beans are tough. If you hell-bent to plant by a certain day, plant beans first. If you hell-bent to plant because your neighbor's planting, plant beans first. If you don't know if your planter's ready to go because you didn't plant some last summer, plant beans first. Assess them. Beans are tough. I think there's a lot of easy yield to be made there just by maximizing the longest days of the year. What is the longest day of the year? Does that change? If we listen to a lot of tree huggers out there, and Al Gore probably says that day's going to change, right? So if you're looking at that, if the longest day of the year is pretty consistent, now we need them flowering and setting the most pods and the most flowers, the most racines, and filling pods the longest days of the year. So if you're going to plant early, plant beans. If you're not planting early on beans, start. There's some free bushels there. Then let's singulate them. Let's singulate them. Who thinks it's important on corn? Is it important to have singulated beans or singulated corn? Y'all want a picket fence stand? Every one of these lines is a plant. Every one of them's the same, right? That's what you want in corn. If you think it's important in corn, it's more important in beans. Go ahead and pull two plants this summer that are this far apart versus those that are this far apart. Because the meter didn't do a good job of singulating, or that planter was bouncing, or because that farmer drug the seed, or that seed bounced in that trench. Go count the number of pods on two plants that are this far apart versus the ones that are this far apart. Don't be surprised if the pod count is double on the plants that are this far apart versus the ones that are this far apart. But most of you call beans poverty peas, right? You call them poverty peas, and you're out there and you're ready to get through with them, and most of the time you're doing what? Let's go up another gear, boys. Let's get through with this. Let's plant a little bit faster. Well, if your meter can't singulate them, figure out a meter that can, because there's free bushels there. You say, well, it costs me money for that meter. In the scheme of things, it's free bushels. So the first thing I'd consider is spreading some risk across relative maturities. The next thing that I think is the lowest hanging fruit in this room, who ordered their soybean seeds at some point this past fall? Come on, raise your hand high. Y'all lying. Who's done it before December? Okay. How'd you know what to plant? I can't hear you.
Her agronomist.
They're agronomists? Yield data? This year gonna be like last year? You gonna plant the same day that you always hope to plant? Hope's a strategy, but it ain't a good one. Y'all agree? We all want to go out there April 10th, April 15th, and we want to be through by April 17th to April 20th, and we want to go do something else. Correct? What happens when it's May 20th? You done already got those beans ordered. How many of you are short in relative maturities? Because the weather's the problem. Because you couldn't get in the field. Because it wasn't fit. Now you got to have a good relationship with your seed supplier that says, you know what, maybe I need to jump back. Because if we're getting free bushels from the longest day of the year, and that's not changing, now what's happening when we plant, if we would have planted April 10th, now we're May the 10th, how much time did we just lose during pod fill, during grain fill? We just lost some bushels, okay? So be willing to think outside the box from those varieties that you bought. And if it's usual and customary, the seed company does what? They ordered seed for what projected what seed they were going to sell 18 months ago, David. They don't want you to change. Seed company projected what seed they were going to sell 18 months ago, and they want to sell that seed. I'm the guy that's going to go out there and plant a wide range of varieties. I've already asked in Michigan, what is usual and customary up here? Oh, most people plant a 1.5 to a 2.5. I'm going to plant from a 0.5 to a 1.9, 1.2. Why? I don't think I got the time on the backside to fill those pots. So I'm going to plant a really early season bean. You say, well, how would you do that? Because it's going to flower faster, and it's hopefully going to be in pod fill the longest days of the year. It's a no-brainer. So that was what I would consider. Okay, next question.
Got
Somebody
one
on
right
this
here,
side.
Dowdy.
Oh, sorry.
His hand a bunch.
Fertigate, it can be part of your program, for sure. Me and David have changed a lot over the years. Before I knew better, I used to fertigate almost everything. We would put out a big slug with the planter, and then we would fertigate, partition 40 to 50 units throughout the season. And on narrow rows, that works out pretty good. 15-inch rows, it works out fine, because you're broadcasting an application. But how many people plant on 15-inch corn? How many people plant on 30s or 20s or wider? Okay, most of you. Now you're broadcasting. We have dug many root pits, especially this guy. How many roots are in the middle of the rows?
Not very many when you start talking about how close to the surface.
And so we don't think we're as efficient. So I would encourage you to fertigate as a rescue, but I think it's a better option to ban fertilizer, either with a strip till, 2x2, or either wide drops. I think that's a better option. Now, if you can't get in the field and it's late and you want to fertigate as a rescue, I'm all for it. But I understand you got a pivot, you got an injection pump, you got a tank sitting in the field, and you want to use it. I've been there, done that. But it's a rescue for me more now than it is a part of my true management strategy. Because an old dog learned a new trick from him that wide drops would outperform often. It would outperform any of those broadcast applications, okay? Real quick, I want to throw a couple slides up just so that you can see them to get you thinking. This is something about Total Acre that I want you to know about. We collect a lot of data. We got all the as applied, we got all the planting maps, varieties, solar radiation data, sunlight, rainfall, populations, anything that you're recording with a 2020, a John Deere monitor, all that. We got all the planting data. We got tons of as-applied maps, when products were applied, nutritional products, when those nutritional products went out, what the tissue samples looked like before and after those products were applied for weeks on hundreds of thousands of acres. More importantly, we then have a yield map that goes over top of that, okay? Now, has anybody ever pulled a tissue sample and felt like they needed to go do something about it? Anybody ever done that? You got a yellow spot in the field, you got a low yielding spot in the field, and you want to do something about it. So, if you're that guy, has anybody applied the best soil fertility they could and then had a nutrient deficiency that showed up? If you had a nutrient deficiency show up, what was the progress or what was the route that you took once you realized that there was a tissue sample deficiency? This is where I want a little bit of interaction. If you just had a product or a tissue sample come back deficient in any nutrient, what would you do about it? Marion, what's normal? You're going to go put some on. How do you know which one to put on? Depends on what tissue samples. Most tissue sample labs don't tell you which product to buy, though. They may tell you a manganese product, but they don't tell you what company. Now, we know a company that owns a lab, and they often make quite a lot of recommendations. But what are you going to do, Marion? You got a manganese deficiency, it's in season, and now you got a tissue sample that's bad. What's your next? What are you going to do? You're going to go buy some manganese, but how do you know which one to buy? Well, I would probably answer your phone, but if you didn't have access to Randy Dowdy.
He's not going to answer your phone.
What you going to do, Marion? You're talking on behalf of the farmer. You going to call the agronomist or the co-op? That sound familiar? Fertilizer dealer? Somebody? The fertilizer dealer sells 4 products. Which one's the farmer going to buy? The cheapest one. Do y'all agree? That's the farmer way. He sells 4. Most farmers are going to gravitate to the one that's the most affordable. What if it's the one that works best? You look like a genius, right? What if it's the one that works the worst? How do you know that? But you could. With Total Acre, one thing that we do is we ask everybody to pull tissue samples on 2 fields. We ask them to grow corn or grow beans or grow wheat our way. we ask them to do 2 fields. That's it, just 2. It can be 2 corn, 2 wheat, a wheat, bean, corn, we don't care. And do it our way. But we ask you to pull tissue samples. You pull those tissue samples, we send them off all to the same lab so there's continuity of data, and we get the data back. When you get that data back, we may have 50 different products that was sourced because in the beginning, people did not know what product to use. We just did not know. But now we've got hundreds of products that's been tested. Now, if you're looking at this slide, now y'all may have better luck than me. This red line right here was a product. That red line beside the 6 there, that red line that goes across, who wants to buy that product? We got it marked out in blue, but it actually had a negative effect on tissue sample values of that zinc for 2 weeks. Marion, 2 weeks. Are all those products created equal in how they performed? That is a question. Are all those products based off that data created equal? No. Which one you want to buy? If it don't move the tissue sample value, what's the chances of it giving you ROI? 0. But you still spent $20 an acre on it, or $10 an acre on it. By the time you figure the application and everything else, Marion, we got a problem. And if you don't make no money on it, do they give you a refund? Nah. But the cool part about Total Acre is all this data for years, for all these samples has been pulled. Now we are product agnostic. We don't care. But we pinpoint the products that work. Is that important? Who are we focused on? The company selling the product or the farmer? The farmer, okay? The next thing. Farmers need to know, David, when to spend money, and they need to know when to stop spending money. Mm-hmm. Have y'all ever pulled a tissue sample before? When you pull that tissue sample, you got an ordinal scale. It's low, deficient, sufficient, high, or very high. If it comes back sufficient, you feel great about it. Now, is that good for 100 bushel corn or 400 bushel corn? Next time you pull a tissue sample and you send it to your lab, ask them that question. You may tell you what they're going to tell you? They don't know because they don't have it tied to yield. Marion, is that important? It's important in the soil sample, but it's more important in the tissue sample. Some guys need to know when to spend money, but some people need to know when to stop spending money. In this example that you see there, all that green, that was for 280 bushel corn. Guy was green most of the year. They give you a warm and fuzzy, that's maybe not your limiting factor. But what if you took the yield gold at 400 bushels? Look what happened. That's the power of the data that we're collecting as a group. There's nobody in this country that's got the data set we've got, period. That's as much of a pitch as I'm going to give you. We cover everything, David, from the planter, soil fertility, when to spray herbicides, when not to spray herbicides. We don't pick varieties. We let you do that. The combine, in season, we walk fields, et cetera, et cetera. We'd love to have an opportunity to have a deeper conversation with you, but these are some of the things that how you help pay for the program. If you sprayed a wrong product on 1,000 acres and you spent $15 an acre, it costs $15,000 that you may or may not make money off of. It's an easy way to pay for this program, okay? Real easy. When you start looking at the numbers, it's real easy, okay? Me and David designed this program from the beginning because we thought you could learn from us. We thought you could learn from the farmers in the group, but more importantly, what was going to be sustainable is that you learn from what? The data. That's why we did it. Okay? Any more questions?
Got one right there.
What are your top strategies for managing heat and drought other than population and irrigation?
Potash.
I was talking to a guy over in the Owl, and he said, well, what could you do? I said, first would be put in a pivot. That would be number one. And obviously that's not an option from everybody. In 2012, we had 2,200 acres of corn, we averaged 49 bushels. That included irrigated acres. So we had a drought. The farms that gave us the best yield were the farms that had the highest base sat of potash. Would that be a clue? What is potash doing? We need a good root system, but it helps the plant cool itself down.
And fungicides help prolong that
Yep.
stress for a little period of time.
Stress mitigation.
But there's no substitute to water. Potash is a natural way that plant cools itself. Next question. Yes, ma'am. Do we do any sap testing? We have both went down that path. Early, David, you can address this.
Yeah.
It's just been a challenge. I mean, you had to ship them cold, you had to ship them overseas or to California, the turnaround time.
I'm sure, I mean, I chased that rabbit some years ago. I've been pulling tissue samples for a long time, almost 30 years now. And I wish if we were to have done it, I would have tried it back then as well. I have the data set for tissue sampling, so I'm not going to talk bad about sap sampling. Just haven't been doing it. Now that we have labs here in the States, that makes it a whole lot convenient because I was sending it to the Netherlands with another group. Now, that's probably just going to be a bridge because this crop diagnostics with this RNA expression, I think that's going to take over the sap side.
I think it's going to take over a lot of it.
Yeah.
We're still going to have to validate it through tissue sample, but I think it's going to be part of the future. If you're interested in total acre and want to learn more, we have 4 meetings a year. We have a big grower clinic where we bring everybody to different places. We've done that with planter clinics as well. We normally have a meeting in December. We have a meeting again in February or end of January where we bring everybody to one location. And then we have summer meetings where we would go walk fields near you. We walk fields. Who would like to see King David's shadow in their field? Maybe he's got something he could teach you and that you could learn from. But I think we also learn from as a group. So we have 4 meetings a year. We'd love to hear more about what you have going on and what your challenges are. But we try to address everything. If you're interested, here's a QR code. You can take a picture. Callie, raise your hand. She can help you. We'd love to hear more about what's going on your farm. Now, I have nowhere else I need to be. But I know it's 1:46 and they're going to want to try to kick us out. But I'm big. They're going to have a hard time. If y'all want to keep going, we'll go longer as long as you want to go. Yes, sir.
What would you do for mitigating stress if you have high salt content in your irrigation water?
High salt content. Move to Georgia and we don't have high salt water. David, high salt content.
In irrigation water, I mean, we deal with that because we're on the James River when it's tidal. So when we're dry, we have to stop pumping water. I mean, we stop. So I mean, it's just not because I don't know. Is it water that stays high from the ground? And my concern, I don't have a great answer from a standpoint. There's a product you can put in that product to do that. We got to flush the salts out of the water. And if you're what state are you from?
Southwest Kansas.
All right, so you're not getting rainfall. So now we got to figure out how to mitigate that in the soil because what's going to happen is we're going to get this sodium. Your base out of sodium is getting high, and then it's all numbers. So now we're losing some potash. Our calcium's going to change. Mag maybe not so much, and our sodium's going up. So we got to get that out. Pray for rain is one.
I don't have an answer. I wish I did.
Yeah. I mean, there are some things that I'm told that you can put on a well, but
It changes pH, but I've never heard it changes the salt salinity.
I mean,
I've heard it change pH, but I've not heard it change salinity. I don't know.
They take salt out of water.
Yes, sir. There you go.
It's a good question.
One of the questions, or the question he asked was, what's the most important ratios when you look at tissue samples for corn and soybeans? Great question.
That is a very good question. On corn, phosphorus and zinc. And then also we like to think, what does corn like a lot of? Nitrogen. We don't get sulfur out of the atmosphere anymore, so nitrogen and sulfur. They would be the two on the corn. I'm still going to be big on, I'm not a big soybean guy other than high yield, but I'm still phosphorus zinc is extremely important to me on that as well.
I think you got to pay attention to iron too.
Iron and manganese.
Iron and manganese is a big deal on both of them as well. And that's one of the things that we've developed. We've got what they call a nutrient power ranking in our software program. We actually have been collecting data since 17, and we are confident enough now, and we're going down the route of AI to help solidify it, that it's not just sufficiency, but it's balance of sufficiency in the tissue samples, and we're telling you which nutrients, once you put them in our software, we're telling you which nutrients are out of balance based off of the hundreds of thousands of tissue samples. So that's fluid by what maturity of the crop is it? What age of the crop is it? Solar radiation, there's a lot of things that we take into account when we give you that number. So, yes, sir. Most people are planting beans too thick. I don't think, if you want to make 100 bushel beans, I don't think you made more than 80,000 final stand. Now, how many do you have to plant to get that 80,000? I mean, do you have slugs? Are you having crusting problems? I mean, is the germ 80% or 95% on the seed? 80,000 final stand is what you need for 100 bushel beans. Most people are planting 140. Now, this is all for early planted beans. This is full season. This is not double crop beans behind wheat. You forget that. But full season beans that are going to be planted early, April, May, 80K final stand is all you need. Just get them all up at the same time and singulate them. That's all you need. You're over planting otherwise, in my opinion. And the meter's going to run a little bit slower, and you're probably going to do a little better job of singulating them when you drop the population. So there's going to be some benefits there. And then hopefully you get some lateral branching. Hopefully you get some lateral branching that is going to be a win too. Yes, sir. A little bit louder. Y'all talk funny. Well, how can you really look past 30-inch rows when a man's made 623 bushels to the acre? I don't think that's the answer. I think 30-inch rows gives you a lot of in-season management options. You can still get up and down that row. A lot of people look for narrow row spacing as being part of the answer. On beans, I would agree. On corn, I think 30 is very smart. I've planted twin row 36s. I've had a 12-inch twin. So basically I had 12 inches between the two rows, and then I had 24-inch metal. I planted 30s and I planted 15s. When I plant 15s, I want a sunshine premium year. I can't afford to have cloudy days. It's a problem. Also, heat, being able to escape out of that canopy, it's a problem at night. It's cooler during the day, but it traps heat at night. 30-inch rows on corn, unless you're making 400 or 500 bushels, I don't think that's your limiting factor. I don't. Good question, though. On beans, it's all about leaf area index. How can I get that crop to canopy as fast as I can and not have sunlight hit the ground? The narrower the rows that you can singulate, the better. You say, well, can I drill them? Not if you can't singulate them. Most drills are a controlled spill, right? So, next question. Yes, sir. A double ear on a corn plant, what's going on? That plant's pretty happy. It's just like suckers. Who likes to see suckers on plants when they're young? Who likes to see those tillers, those little suckers? There's no question that plant feels like it can do more. And I think a plant can, put on 6 ears? Just whether
6
or not
or
it
8?
does it?
Yeah.
Yeah, it's just whether it does it. I mean, David, I'm going to tee you up for this one.
I was waiting for you to let me talk.
You make 600 bushels with a lot of double ears. Tell him what you need to do.
Yeah. Well, the thing is, when you see that ear and you want to manage it, you're too late. It's happened. You've missed a chance. When do you normally want to go out there and fertilize for the main ear? When y'all go in there and wide drop or easy drop or side dress late or early? It's usually when you're at that, V5 stage, right? So that second ear, where's that second ear come from? That's one leaf node below.
Let's keep going.
You need to start fertilizing for that 7-10 days after that next leaf can come out. Why is that? Because if you wait too long, it's not going to make grain. So who wants to put out all that extra fertilizer for an ear they don't even know if they're going to have? How many times have you pulled a second ear and all of a sudden you see your primary ear's got 16 or 18 rows around, your second ear's got how many rows around? It's typically got more. It might have 18 or 20. Why is that? Because it was warmer when it was determined how many rows around were going to sit on that ear. The problem is you just don't know you're going to have it. The only way you can assure that you'll have an opportunity or a chance for more second ears is plant it thinner so you can get more sunlight in there. Well, you're banking on too much risk there, because if you don't get the sunlight, if you get the sunlight but you don't make that second ear, you're not going to get the yield that you coveted. So most seed companies really don't breed for that second ear. They'd rather it not be there. It's hard to keep it, and if it goes through any stresses, it's going to give up that second ear.
Outside rows have it.
They do, because they got sunlight.
Sunlight. That's what's driving it. Sunlight. Next question. I'm going to probably get cussed out by management at some point, okay?
Well, I'm going to have to
they'll
leave
just
in a
have to tell me.
minute, so.
Huh?
I'm going to have to leave in a minute. I got somewhere else to be.
I'll keep going. Yes, sir.
Easiest corn bushel most people are missing.
Easiest corn bushel most people are missing is their planter.
Planner, emergence.
Yep. Most people, they buy a new planter, think it's right. I put a performance upgrade kit on my planter 3 years ago. Great. Probably the best decision I made on the planter. But I checked all the double disc openers. I took them all off and put a different set on because they didn't meet my tolerance. Now there's other things, T-handles, I remember as a kid, we would set a T-handle, and if any of them were not in the right hole, I got chastised because I didn't set it right. Each row is its own individual row, so you need to be checking that. How many times you look at it? I got performance upgrade kit. I got one row that's 3 holes different. That's the max. I got the right depth, but it's off. So the planter, when the planter leaves the field, I like to say 65% of your yield's determined. You can't fix that problem. If there is a problem.
Has everybody done a flag test here? If you haven't, please, you realize a lot about what's going on. I want you to go to the field. If you don't know what a flag test is, I want you to be there 1/8 inch or less. If your vision sucks, this is not your job, okay? You can't look down the road and see corn. You can't see a green hue across the field. You need to be on your hands and knees, looking at the ground surface. There's a spike right there. 1/8 inch or less. Take a red flag, put it beside it. Now look for, mark off 1/1000th of an acre. That's going to vary based off row spacing. Then come back and say, here's one. Put a flag beside it. You now put a red flag beside every one that's up in that 1/1000th of an acre. You say, well, Randy, based off my population, I'm supposed to have one between here and here. There should be one right there. Don't scratch. Let him come up on his own. Mark everything up in 1/1000th of an acre with a red flag, blue flag, yellow, I don't care. Then I want you to come back 12 hours later, and I want you to mark every plant that's up now that was not up 12 hours ago, and I want you to have a different colored flag. I want you to do this every 12 hours with a different color flag and notate it on a piece of paper. If you're in YMS or our software, you're going to plug it into YMS, and we're going to tell you how many GDU variation between the first and the last emerger, and we're going to give you what we call a flag test tax. We're going to have you change your yield goal based off emergence. But if you haven't done this, I'm going to encourage everybody to do this. We got a company that's out there that gives you free flags now, right? They'll give you free flags because they know that they can hopefully fix your problem. But I want you to take that, and at the end of the year, I want you to take all the ears that were red flags and put them in a bucket, and the blues in a bucket, and the whites in a bucket, and the yellows in a bucket. And I want you to go weigh them. I want you to shell them. Get out there with the old-timey corn sheller, the hand sheller, whatever. Great thing to do with grandkids. Great thing to do with grandkids. Shell that grain. If the first emergers weigh 0.6 of a pound and the second emergers weigh 0.5 of a pound, whose fault's that, Marion? Did it rain more on the ones that are heavier? Was the sunlight better on the ones that were heavier? They're this far apart. Is the sunlight better? It's going to go back to emergence. And we got to understand where yield's being lost. Once you do this, and then do it the whole width of the planter. And when you realize that different rows perform differently and how they express yield, now you can do something about it. And if you got one row that makes 340 bushels and the row over here makes 180 bushels, Marion, we got a problem. But ignorance is bliss. Farmers don't worry about what they don't know. If you'll do this and have that data that we reference, I think it'll make a big difference. That's why we could equally say with conviction, the planter in this room is what's limiting 99% of you. Emergence. Are they all coming up at the same time, yes or no? And when I say same time, simultaneously. 12-hour, 24-hour, depending on how many GDUs you're collecting during that time frame. Simultaneous. If they're not, fix it, yield goes up for nothing. Because you already planted it and you already bought the seed. Now make it come up at the same time. Okay? David, I think we're getting, based off my text messages, they are blowing me up, saying, shut up. Thank you. Was this worth your time? Thank you. We appreciate it. We got a booth over here. Feel
Right
free
near
to
the
stop
main
by.
stage.
And tomorrow morning, there's a big announcement going to be made with Farm Journal, with the farm, the U.S. Farm Report being taped live in the morning at 7 a.m. Look forward to seeing you there. Thank you.